Good morning, good afternoon, middle of the night, whatever you're listening to it. Good day. Welcome to Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. This is episode 4. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We're on Rumble, where we originate, on a Blogger. We are a blog post, a blog spot. It's at medlockpost.blogspot.com. We're also back on YouTube, and we're post on X and Facebook. So there are plenty of places, and we're working on others. So keep looking for us. We're trying to get on Spotify. That's a little more complicated. It's not as easy as they make it sound. But we are here, episode 4. On a beautiful Tuesday morning, hot because it's summertime. And the weather people are making it sound like it's never been hot when it's summer. So eventually they'll get over it. So before we get into our main message today, I just want to make a comment about what has happened since our last podcast on Friday. And what has happened in the world, the developments with the Israel-Iran war, what President Trump did by going in there and destroying those nuclear facilities. This is monumental, folks. Now, I was born, the Korean War started. I've lived through Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, other conflicts, and watched a lot of history. I lived through the hippie movement and the tragic happenings of the 1960s. I was a firsthand witness to some of that. And I can tell you right now, and I also witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall. I was watching that speech when Ronald Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." I mean, that reverberated around the world, folks. What Trump did Saturday night, has the same effect. This has reverberated around the world. It put America back on the world standing where it should be. That the Democrats had destroyed for multiple administrations. This is big history we're looking at. Now, is the ceasefire going to hold? I certainly hope so. I heard just a little while ago that the Israeli planes going into Iran have turned around. They're not going to drop their bombs. That's a good thing. And that Trump and Putin have had a conversation this morning on how to work together to solve this thing. Now, we know that the only thing that's going to stop this regime because of their ideology is total, complete, unconditional surrender. But watch this, folks. Watch it. And then watch the idiots in the United States that are fighting Trump on everything. They want to impeach him. Oh, this is unconstitutional. It's not. But you know what? What if it was? Look at the ramifications, positive effects it can have on the whole world. It will change the Middle East for a long time. Okay. My comment, my opening dialogue there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to put things out there to help lift, inspire, encourage, and empower your lives. And as we do this, as I put them out there, I know a couple of feedback. I said, Richard, aren't you in a utopian world? No, because what I'm going to talk about today is relevant. Well, everything I talk about is relevant for everybody. There just needs to be some changes, folks. Excuse me. Just need to be some changes for the better. So I want to start out with this quote from David O. McKay. The home is the first and most effective place for children to learn the lessons of life: truth, honor, virtue, self-control, the value of education, honest work, and the purpose and privilege of life. Nothing can take the place of home in rearing and teaching children, and no other success can compensate for failure in the home. Now, I've used that quote over and over and over in a lot of lectures, a lot of uh, counseling, and so forth. But that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to break this down. So, the home, as described by David O. McKay, is much more than a physical dwelling. It is the foundational environment where character and values are shaped and instilled. Now think about that. Those of us that go to church on Sunday, do we rely on the Sunday school teachers and the ministers and preachers and whoever to do that for us? Folks, that's our responsibility as parents, as siblings, especially older siblings. And lifelong habits are fostered. I was talking with some friends the other day. We're talking about growing up. We were talking about how we had to work. We had chores. Had to be done before we could go out and play. Our homework had to be done before we could watch TV or go out and play or anything else. And work was instilled. My dad taught me and my brother, if you work, if you work hard, learn to work, you will never want for anything. And that's true. And a lot of people have that habit, that work habit. Sadly, too many have been taught the government will take care of you. So it is within these familiar walls that children first witness and eternalize subtle rhythms of daily living. Subtle rhythms of daily living. The honesty reflected in a parent's words. I bet you that so many of you listening can look back and reflect on what your parents told you, and look back and say, that was true. They were right. I know my mother had an instinct. It was an amazing instinct between right and wrong. My dad did too, but my mom's it was amazing. She could read people. Boy, could she read people. And she was right. So how about the patience shown during challenges? All families have their challenges. Do parents set the example by showing patience, working through it, helping, supporting, staying faithful, exercising their faith? This is done in the home. In the home. And how about the diligence enacted through daily responsibilities? I was just talking about that. Responsibilities. Folks, I remember, of course, this was way back when we had to iron everything, even our underwear. Everything was cotton. Okay. You wash it, you had to iron it. I can remember having to stand on a chair or a box, a wooden box, to iron clothes, to iron handkerchiefs, to iron pillowcases. Yeah, we ironed pillowcases back then. I was small. I was, but I learned these things is what needs to be done. My dad was a scoutmaster, so I went camping. I learned to cook on a fire before I learned to cook on a stove because the stove was too high. They didn't want us standing on a box or a chair cooking on the stove. That was too dangerous. So my brother and I learned to cook on a fire before we learned to cook on a stove. And you said, well, what's the importance of cooking? Hello, you got to eat, right? Well, back then we didn't have restaurant delivery. We didn't have fast foods. You had to go out and get things. Well, a few there were, but you ate at home. I mean, it was when we'd go out to eat, whenever, it was a special occasion. Now people eat out every day. And that's another discussion, being ready um, for emergencies. And then we also learn compassion extended to others. How many times did you have to forgive a sibling or they forgive you? Now, my brother and I fought like crazy. We were different as day and night. But when it came to forgiving, compassion, and service and helping others, when it came time for us to go do our work, we just did it. There was no question. We just did it. These are things that we learn in the home. Are there some other things that we can learn in the home? I think there is. Did I go too far? Nope. Opportunity for teaching. You heard the phrase, a teaching moment? Well, every day, multiple times a day in the home are teaching moments. So, opportunity for teaching, simple acts, sharing a meal, resolving a disagreement, working together on household tasks. How about that? Transform into lessons on cooperation, empathy, resilience, and respect. Teaching moments. I've been teaching since the 1960s. There's always a teaching moment. I've had my own children. There's a teaching moment. In scouts, as a scout leader, there are teaching moments. And even in college classes, which I'm involved in, teaching moments. Through listening. Parents become the best listeners there are. Listen to your children. Even they're grown and they've got families. Listen to them. You don't need to preach all the time. Through these experiences, children come to understand not only what is expected of them, but why those values matter. Why they matter. Home provides a safe space to make mistakes, ask questions, and grow. buffered by unconditional love and patient guidance. Unconditional love. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to put up with your bad stuff. It's just we're going to try to help you through it. We still love you. But we're not going to tolerate your bad stuff. Now, I grew up in the era where we got spanked. We got punished. We got grounded. I remember one time I came home about a half hour late from a date. I got grounded for 2 weeks. Simple, right? So there's discipline. Now, my parents didn't beat me. They spanked me. So moving on here to, I'm not ready for that. So central to David O. McKay's teaching is the idea that no institution, no matter how well intentioned, can replicate the influence of a nurturing family. Schools may impart knowledge and skills, and communities may offer support and opportunity. But it is the home that first instills the sense of purpose and privilege in life. Here, children learn to view education as a lifelong pursuit, work as a source of fulfillment, and virtue as a guiding light. Integrity, kindness, self-discipline, carry those qualities and friendships, carry those qualities into their friendships, their schools, their workplaces, and their communities. Children raised in an environment of integrity, kindness, self-discipline, carry those qualities into their friendships, schools, workplaces, and communities. In this way, the home becomes not only the seedbed of individual achievement, but also the cornerstone of a just and compassionate society. All right, let me get rid of that. And carry on with this because we were looking at this. I know I'm telling a lot of stories about my parents and my childhood. Was it perfect? No. But I have wonderful parents, and they embodied one way or another the things that we just talked about. Now, my dad, my parents, they wanted us to have a better education than they had. And that was a big thing back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And we got it. Now, I can remember my parents bought encyclopedia. We had 2 sets of encyclopedias. One was the World Book, and the other was it Britannica Encyclopedia? We had 2 sets, and they kept them up to date. The World Book would put out a monthly book, and my parents subscribed to that. I couldn't wait for that new encyclopedia to come and get updated on things. I would sit there for hours. I'd go pull them off the shelf, and I'd sit there on the sofa going through these things, lay down on the floor, go through them, and read stuff, study about a country, study about what's going on. The space race, when that started, they would send out these books about the space race. And I'd study all that, go through it, and read it. It created in me an inquiring mind. My parents were readers. They read all the time. My dad, I don't know if he looked at himself like this. He was an educator. As a scoutmaster, he was an educator. And he did it mostly through example. So ultimately, success in life is measured not only by accomplishments in the public sphere, but by the strength of one's character and the depths of one's relationships. As David O. McKay so powerfully reminds us, the fulfillment of our responsibilities at home lays the groundwork for all other successes in the home. To nurture, love, and teach within our families is to shape the future, one heart at a time. Within the comforting embrace of home, the foundational lessons of life take root and flourish. It is here in the home, in the daily rhythms and intimate exchanges of family life, that abstract virtues are made tangible and enduring. Truth, sensible truth, becomes more than an ideal. It is woven into every honest conversation, and the courage to admit mistakes, and the consistency of words aligning with actions. Think about that. Courage to admit mistakes, and in the consistency of words aligning with actions. Then honor emerges through respect, both given and received, fostering a climate where promises are kept and trust is sacred. And virtue, often spoken of in lofty terms, finds its expression in the kindness extended to others, in small acts of generosity, and in the quiet resolve to do what is right, even when it is difficult. Self-control, another vital quality, is cultivated through the gentle guidance and example of caregivers. Children observe and learn as adults manage frustration, delay gratification, and approach challenges with patience and composure. Over time, these lived examples encourage the development of inner strength, enabling young people to make wise decisions and to stand firm in their convictions. Children observe and learn as adults manage frustration. Now, you're sitting there thinking about all the times you've been frustrated. How did you handle it? Parents are caregivers. How many times were you sick and your parents took care of you? And your grandparents helped. Your grandparents loved you too. And I feel for people that have not experienced this type of home life. I feel for them. It is sad. They have been robbed of a lot of things. The home is also the crucible in which a genuine appreciation for education is forged. Here, the value of learning is demonstrated not only through formal study, but through curiosity, exploration, and the encouragement to ask questions about the world. Parents who nurture a love of discovery inspire their children to view education as a lifelong adventure, a source of joy rather than mere obligation. I was talking about this earlier. Reading, studying, growing, understanding, forming your own opinions, ideas, and not being a sheep to the crowd. This starts in the home. Parents, when your children come home from school, do you just say, "How was school today?" "Oh, it was fine." And you leave it at that? Because that's what the kids are going to say, right? Do you help them or observe their homework? No, I agree. There's some things out there today I wouldn't be able to help with. but you're there supporting them, help them, working through it together. I remember I used to take my kids' school books and I'd start reading them to try to keep up with what they're going through. One time, our teacher, my daughter's teacher, called us in for a parent teacher conference and discussed our daughter. And my daughter's not that good of a mathematician. She's really not. And she was struggling, but we go in there and even the teacher told me, we I'm not good at math. If it wasn't for my college roommate, I wouldn't have passed college, math in college. So I looked up on the board, they had this square up there and numbers on it. I says, is this how you're teaching math? So we're trying to teach fractions. I says, can I come into your classroom tomorrow, the next day, and teach fractions? She says, oh, I'd love it. Because the kids were not getting it the way they want it. I was having a hard time figuring out what was on the board. So I went in the next day or a couple of days later, went in and taught fractions. And I says, I would like a volunteer student to come up. Stood them there. I said, this is 1. Now we're going to take 1 and we're going to divide 1 in half. Could I get another? So it comes up and I says, now this student is now 1/2 and this student is 1/2. And I brought up 2 more students. This is a 4th. This is 4th. And on and on and on. I'm putting this stuff up on the board. And I made a game out of it. So they understood it. And the teacher called me a few days later and she says, Mr. Medlock, you did more in 30 minutes than I could have done all school year in teaching them fractions. Can you help me teach math the rest of the year? I didn't go in and teach again, but I helped her put game plan or class plans together. It's simple. It doesn't have to be hard. All right, let me move on here. We're really getting short on time here. Honest work, too, is dignified and celebrated in the home environment, whether through shared chores, collaborative projects, or the recognition of each family member's contribution. Children witness firsthand the rewards of effort and the satisfaction that comes from a job well done. This early exposure instills a work ethic that will serve them in all areas of life and teaches them to find meaning in their labors. Now, I've carried that with me, and I've taught it to many youth. And when my brother and I wanted things, guess what? We had to work for them. My parents they didn't have a lot of money. They didn't just go out and buy things. We had to work for things. We had to work for things. When my buddy and I wanted to go to the 1964 Boy Scout Jamboree in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Now, back then, it only cost $250. Now it's like $2,000 to go to a Scout Jamboree. So a friend of my dad's had just bought a farm out in the country, and he needed to clear the land. He needed all these rocks picked up. So Jimmy and I went out there, worked for weeks on Saturdays, and after school going out there. He'd sit on the tractor. He had this big flatbed long trailer, and we'd be throwing rocks up on that thing all day. Then we got through, we'd have to go down and shovel manure and do all this stuff. And then he wrote a check for the Jamboree. That way, we felt like we did it, we owned it, and we deserved to go. Now, my parents and his parents could have written the $250 check, but that wasn't the lesson there. And Jimmy's dad, my dad, parents were very good friends, so they concocted this idea. So, but it taught us a great lesson. You value more what you earned. All right. Above all, the home imparts a sense of purpose and privilege in life, a recognition that every individual has inherent worth and a unique role to play. My brother and I were two different talents, talents, totally different outlooks, totally different personalities. A lot of people didn't even think we were brothers. We were so different. And my parents understood that. They talked to us that way. And they understood that. Because each child is different. But my brother and I were just night and day. And then surrounded by love and encouragement, children gain confidence in their abilities and a desire to contribute positively to the world around them. They come to understand that life is not merely to be endured, but to be embraced as a precious opportunity for growth, connection, and service. Let me go over that again. They come to understand that life is not merely to be endured, but to be embraced as a precious opportunity for growth, connection, and service. A lot of these people think they just have to endure. They're victims. They've been told they are victims. That's a mentality I don't ever want to get into. In essence, the lessons learned at home are the quiet architects of character and destiny. They endure far beyond childhood, shaping not only the individuals who carry them forth, but also the communities and societies they touch. The home, in its simplest and most profound sense, is where life's most cherished lessons are taught and lived. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our message on Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. Have a great day, and we will see you around the corner. Good day.